Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rodrigo Pereira, the program coordinator. And on behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome you to the Autumn Meeting 2021 of the Brazilian Physical Society. And this is the second time that we are having a virtual meeting. And the main advantage of this format is, of course, that not having to travel makes it easier for people from all over Brazil and from abroad to attend. And in fact, this year we have over 1,300 registered participants, which is a significant increase in comparison with the past few years. And I should say that when organizing this year's event, we benefited a great deal from last year's experience. So I'd like to thank especially Eduardo Granado, the previous program coordinator, who went through all the effort to adapt the meeting to this online format that we are using again. And I think this was done in a way that still preserves the essence of such a traditional event. And for this meeting that starts today, my colleagues in the scientific committee worked really hard to put together a very interesting program with many renowned speakers covering different areas of physics. So we hope that you will enjoy all the talks and poster sessions, as well as the tutorials on Friday. I just have one quick announcement for those of you who will be presenting in the poster sessions but have not uploaded your files yet. You can still do it anytime before your session starts, but please do it as early as possible so that other participants can check out your poster and submit questions to you even before the session. You also have the option to post a link to an external room on Google Meet or Zoom, so you can have live discussions during the poster session. And without further ado, I'd like to wish you all a very inspiring and productive meeting, and with lots of virtual interactions. And I now invite the president of the Brazilian Physical Society, Rogério Rosenfeld, to introduce our first speaker. Rogério, please.
Thank you, Rodrigo. So good morning to you all. It's an honor to be the chair of the opening session of this major meeting of the Brazilian Physical Society. So as Rodrigo said, this is a virtual meeting, and I hope the next one we will at least have a part that is face-to-face meeting. So it's a great pleasure to introduce the speaker of the opening talk, Professor Marcelo Knobel. But before doing so, I just want to remark that this is very timely. The meeting it's called Autumn Meeting, and actually autumn finished 32 minutes in the morning of today. But let's think this is still autumn. It's cold enough, but it's still autumn, okay? So, so Professor Marcelo Knobel, I read a little bit of his CV. He was the 12th rector of the University of Campinas in Brazil, where he's a full professor of physics. And he also held other leadership roles, including the executive director of the Unicamp Exploratory Science Museum, the vice rector for undergraduate programs, vice president of the Brazilian Physical Society, that's a very important role, and executive director of the Brazilian Nanotechnology National Laboratory. And Marcelo has already published more than 250 scientific papers, in addition to numerous opinion pieces in both national and international newspapers and magazines. He's the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Magnetism and Magnetic Materials from Elsevier. And he's an Eisenhower Fellow of the John Simons Guggenheim Memorial Foundation and Lehman Fellow. And he's a member-elect of the Governing Council of the Magna Charta Observatory. So Marcelo has an incredible experience, but he's going to talk today about something that I think is very close to his heart, which is pseudosciences. And I just want to say a few words about the role of the Brazilian Physical Society on this. First, maybe you noticed that we published a very harsh letter in the Brazilian Physical Society site a couple of years ago. I think it's called Enough with Pseudosciences, ! And in fact, this is the most viewed letter document that we published. We have more than 54,000 views already. And it deals with the impact of pseudosciences in the public health system here in Brazil. And also I have to say that the Brazilian Physical Society started a fact-checking site for physics, and that I think is a very important initiative. It's called the Verifísica, and Marcelo has a very important role in this site. He's one of the members of the committee that oversees these sites. So in addition, Marcelo has recently published a book on the perils of pseudoscience. It's called The Illusion of the Moon. And was this year's book, and the subtitle is Ideas to Decipher the World Through Science and to fight the negationism. So this is a very important book, and I think everybody should read it. And also, Marcelo has a YouTube channel called Reciprocal Space. So I think this is for solid state physicists who understand the joke. And right, and I invite everyone to visit the site. It has very interesting talks to many people. And the last thing I want to mention today is that before Marcelo's talk is that as Marcelo will say, science and scientists are under attack in Brazil and also in other places in the world. And a very important initiative is going to be launched today by the Brazilian Society for the Advancement of Sciences, which is called the Research, Science and Freedom Observatory, which will check the freedom of scientists to speech without being attacked. So without further ado, I'm really excited to hear Marcelo's talk today, which will be about physics in the fight against misinformation and denialism. So Marcelo, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Rogério. Thank you, Rodrigo, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here opening this important meeting. Well, in fact, when I woke up today with this, the temperature of about 13 degrees here in Campinas, I remembered, I wish we would be together in Caxambu, São Lourenço, or on these places. I remember my first meeting was, if I'm not wrong, in 1988, a few years ago. It was really nice to meet everyone there. It was really an experience for a student that I was of science, beginning with science, and it was really important for my push to become a physicist, and it was really great. So it's a pity that we cannot have a meeting together, but of course it's important to keep doing this even in the remote mode. We are in this pandemic situation that we are now all facing, and I appreciate very much. It's really an honor for me to be here with you in this important meeting. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. I will share here my screen. I have a presentation, and just let me see here if I can. Okay. Are you seeing it? Okay, just let me know. Okay. Well, my intention here is to talk a little bit about, as the title says, about this misinformation, denialism, and pseudoscience that we are all facing. And as Rogério already mentioned, this is the theme, the main theme of the book. Well, it's not the main theme. It's one of the things that I mentioned in this recent book I have published this year, called A Ilusão da Lua. I try to show a little bit more the beauties of science which I believe are really, really important to attract people to science, to show why science is so important, it's so nice, it's so beautiful. So I try to mix these ideas of the beauty and the really wonder of science, and show the perils and the problems of pseudosciences. The book, of course, is related to this very interesting and fascinating, I would say, illusion that we have with the moon. It's really an idea that we all face when the moon is on the horizon, that we think our brain, in fact, thinks that it's bigger than it really is. And this is, a metaphor to show that the beauty of science, thousands and thousands of years that everyone is seeing this, and in fact, it's very hard to explain this kind of illusion that happens in our brain. So it's really, really, an attractive way to show what science can in fact do. And I would like to start with that. With this, it's really, I would focus on this idea that began with Francis Bacon. The knowledge is born from amazement. So we should amaze the children, amaze the people that would eventually become a scientist, or even adults, trying to show that the important thing is the curiosity to keep questioning, to keep open to the knowledge and the new knowledge. I would start with these interesting questions that were published a few years ago in Science, 2005, in fact, and they show it in 2005, the top 125 questions that were not answered yet, and they are probably not answered yet 15 years later. So just to mention, so fascinating things that we have and we face every day, which are how our memories stored and retrieved. We are alone in the universe. How is the greenhouse effect affecting us? What is the universe made of? So many important questions that science is not able to answer yet. We are working on that as a scientist. And in fact, we have so many questions, and in fact, we have science everywhere. So I can see here some science and something that is really not science. For the ones who doesn't speak Portuguese here, I like very much this example of this was my neighbor in the building I was living here in Campinas. You can see here it's a hair care place, photon hair womb, from curly hair to wash the hair in the velocity of light. So you can see here many examples that we face every day, that they try to mimic science, but in fact, they are not science. As a matter of fact, Rogério mentioned just now, and these kind of things, I don't know if I work with this, because I work with this kind of issue, they keep following me, but I received these messages yesterday in my Instagram. Can you see that? The solstice of winter happens today, 12:32, as Rogério mentioned. In my experience, this exact moment opens an energetic space that lasts about 5 to 10 minutes, and it's a good moment to create intentions for the new station, in my experience, to make contact with the energies of elementals, because of this energetic vacuum. Happy new beginning. So let's use this for this interesting and important meeting of the Brazilian Physical Society, the autumn meeting. The problem is that these kind of things can be really, really dangerous sometimes. Of course, if you receive a message like this one, it's no problem at all. Okay, it's a joke, or you can even believe that some people believe in that and no problem at all. But sometimes, even if you don't believe in this kind of stuff, they can affect us very much. This is an example. I don't know if everyone knows here, but from 2018, we as taxpayers, we are paying in our system of health, SUS, we are paying 29 procedures that are called integrative practices. And they include many, I couldn't even translate this to English because I don't know the names in English, but they claim that they are therapeutic resources based on traditional knowledge. We, as the taxpayers, are paying, for example, Reiki, Shantala, yoga, hand imposition, ozonotherapy, floral therapy, chromotherapy, geotherapy, that it's the use of, I don't know, the use of hearth, and apitherapy, which is the use of any kind of bees in the treatment of any disease and so on. So even if we don't believe in some of these issues that we consider not being scientifically proved, we are paying for that. And this is really, really troublesome. If you take a look and you watch, for example, I made a quantum, the search for the word quântica in Portuguese, which is quantum in English, at the website of the Amazon in Portuguese. The first physics book appears, I don't know, in the third page, probably. If you take a look on that, you can have an idea. So you can take a look here. You can find quantum consciousness, millionaire DNA, quantum mind, quantum life, quantic vibrational therapy, the quantum healing. This is a classic, the quantum healing for animals, the quantum doctor, and so on. And they, for example, in this book, the Cura Quântica, which is a well-known person, it's a Deepak Chopra, is a bestseller author. He says, each one of us is a localized field of energy and information with retrofeed loops, cybernetic retrofeed loops interacting with a non-local field of energy and information. So this is a kind of language that these people use in order to deceive people who believe that they are buying some scientific content. If you keep following on this track of quantum being used in a different way, for example, here is the physio-quantic. It's a floral vibrational essence. So you can, if you take a look on this in this drug, there is nothing. It's just water with and they say the composition, for example, each composition here is composed by a solution, a conservative solution, water, and micro quantities of vegetal extracts and floral vibrational essences. So probably nothing, it's just water. And the last year, there was a new launch in the market. I am not being paid for these people, so just to let you know, is quantum integral salt. And you can see here the benefits. They help to strengthen the bones, the teeth, everything. So the hairs and so on, to help to keep the pressure and so on. And if you keep the track, you believe that they are being successful because they just launched the quantum salt temperado. I don't know in English. So and they are, for example, you can make now your quantum Christmas salad, just to mention one example of a receipt that I saw in a website. And of course, every one of us dealing with physics have followed several of these examples. So here is just to show some ideas of the quantum word being used. Even now, there is a conference, National Conference of Quantum Pedagogy. And you can make the mini course of quantum, toys for children, quantum, diversion for children, or quantum acupuncture, and so on, and so on. So this is part of what I would say that is a part of what it's being known as an information disorder. So we have several types of misinformation, disinformation. So I will focus on this one, which is called disinformation. Disinformation is false information that is deliberately created or disseminated with the express purpose to cause harm. This is the problem, of denialism that we are following nowadays. Of course, there is also part of the disinformation, which is the so-called misinformation. Many times people believe they are doing a good thing by spreading news which are not true, which are not correct, which are pseudoscientific, for example. But this is something that we should all worry about, because it's harming very much science, the belief in science, and also our knowledge in general. And the problem is that we are now facing a world where the social networks and rapid communication applications like WhatsApp are playing a very important role in order to multiply this transmission of this information. We have also what we call the pseudoscience. It's a belief or process that disguises itself as science in an attempt to claim a legitimacy that it would otherwise not be able to achieve on its own terms. So here I put homeopathy, quantum cures, as mentioned before, telekinesis, and so on. There is also, besides pseudoscience, the anti-science or scientific denialism is the denial of science as a methodology to obtain knowledge. Here we can put together the flat earth movement, the anti-vax movement, the denial of climate change, the chloroquinism that we are facing nowadays, with people believing there is a treatment for the COVID pandemic, and so on. And the role of social networks is really, really important. So you can see here the social network. There is a rather new report from Reuters showing the importance of these social media and social networks in Brazil. And there are many groups, unfortunately, that they are organized, interested in spreading disinformation, giving rise to fake news. And there are several factors that can affect that. Of course, the social aspects of belonging to one group. Why someone wants to spread disinformation? They believe in that, they belong to a specific group. There are psychological effects. For example, people that believe more on the feelings, on the emotions, that it's the fight between emotions and reason. The difficulty in understanding that information is false. So we are failing in the education part, showing which is the information which can be, critically denied. And there is, of course, the confirmation and reinforcement of specific beliefs, and the phenomenon of the amplification of bad news, the so-called viralization, happens more with bad news, with fake news, with news that are, easily spreaded instead of the real true. So let me just jump into a part that I try to explain a little bit more. What is pseudoscience? In order to understand what is not science, we should understand a little bit more of what is science. What is science? The problem is that, as you probably know, science is not easy to define. I like very much this phrase. Science is neither a philosophy nor a belief system. It is a combination of mental operations that has become increasingly the habit of educated peoples, a culture of illuminations hit upon by a fortunate turn of history that yielded the most effective way of learning about the real world ever conceived. So the idea is that science is a way of looking at the universe, a specific way that has many parts, including a methodology which is specific, but most importantly, that we really, as a scientist, believe in evidence, really believing in evidence. In general, or in principle, the scientist wants to get some real-world understanding, make objective and accurate observations of the real world, and develop theories that are the best explanation of these observations, and that therefore approach closer and closer to the truth. Of course, we know that we probably will never know if we are close to the truth, but we are trying to do so with the evidence, with the observation, and so on. And this is a problem which is a classic problem in science philosophy. We are not able to respond to that, but we can have what this is called the demarcation problem. So we have science in one hand and non-science on the other hand. There are many things that are not science and they don't intend to be, and it's fine. Religion, for example, literature, philosophy, others kind of ways to look at the universe and to face the universe in a different way. No problem at all. That the problem that we are as a scientist must be a little bit concerned, or not a little bit, but very much concerned, is about the pseudoscience, which are non-science procedures that try to disguise themselves as science. And this is a problem that has been, I will not go into the details on this graph, because it's a kind of, it's history of science, science philosophy, or science history in only one slide. This is an open problem. For the philosophy of science, it's an open problem. No one is able yet to really understand what are called these demarcation criteria. Sorry, I forgot to translate here. Demarcation criteria. So this is something that comes from this 16th, 17th century. Up to now, there are philosophers of science discussing this issue. And more recently, there are many discussions on that. In 1983, so something which is really new, this philosopher of science, Larry Loudon, said that there is no solution to this problem. So from him, he wrote a paper saying that there's no solution. But of course, many other philosophers have reconsidering this problem, discussing this issue, and I would say that what I learned preparing this class is that nowadays is a consensus that what distinguishes science is that it cares about evidence and is willing to change its theories based on evidence. This is something that beliefs are not able to do. For example, a person who believes that the earth is flat, there is no evidence that can change this opinion. It's an opinion. Though they don't believe in evidence, they don't care about evidence, and therefore it's not science. This is more or less the claim or the idea. So what is pseudoscience? Claims of questionable scientific value, disproved theories that are hard to forget. So the pseudoscientists usually they simply ignore any kind of evidence against their opinion, and many facts associated with press coverage, social media dissemination, full of urban legends, folk aspects, beliefs, cults, and so on. So I would like to stress 8 important points, which are, really important. I will try to go into the detail of a few of them. Anecdotes are not science. Scientific language is not science. Strong sentences do not mean true statements. Heresy is not equal to correctness. I will make a detail a little bit later. Rumors are not equal to reality. Unexplained is not unexplainable. Correlation does not mean cause-effect. And coincidence does not imply connection. Not necessarily. It can, but it's not necessarily imply connection. So we should we should care about that, because it's really easy to make pseudoscience. As we are here talking to scientists, doing good science, it's a really hard work. One must constantly check for errors, inaccuracy, implicit assumptions, pitfalls due to our own bias and expectations. And it's really a boring and complicated, a difficult job to do. On the other hand, pseudoscience, it's really easy to do. It's easier to ignore all checks, repetition, and boring work. It's easier to believe things without criticism. And to tell you the truth, for most people, life is good without understanding the difference between science and pseudoscience. So usually people don't care about it, and it's our job to care about this. So let me just show here a cartoon I like very much. Welcome to Basic Astronomy. Before we start, are there any questions? Yeah. What makes astronomy different from astrology? Lots and lots of math. And then the class is empty immediately. So this is the appeal of pseudoscience. It's very hard. I don't know, but I think this character is based on Rogerio Rosenfeld. He is very similar to him, isn't it? So what people believe in, why people believe in pseudoscience? People usually believe in anecdotal evidence. So if we receive a WhatsApp message from our family group, usually we believe in it because it's our brother, it's our sister, it's our father, our boyfriend, girlfriend. We believe in anecdotal evidence. people don't understand that correlation does not imply causality. The importance of a control sample is fundamental, especially in the health areas. The role of randomness and coincidence, the placebo effect. Many times I would say also, we don't understand, people usually don't understand numbers, basic statistics and probabilities and so on. The placebo effect. The scientific literacy, of course, is important. So people don't understand how science is made. Lack of belief in science in many parts of the world. This happens, not here in Brazil especially, but in many parts of the world, this is an important issue. And most importantly, inability to subject one's own beliefs to a more rigorous test. This is something I will try to talk a little bit about later. So I based it on a classic work by Carl Sagan, in this book, The Demon Haunted World. He suggested a baloney detection kit in order to watch and distinguishing science from pseudoscience. In fact, it's more complicated than the 7 I picked to show you, but I think these are important ones. So the first clue when you are dealing with a pseudoscience, reliance on anecdotes to state something. It doesn't matter how many narratives there are to support a statement. Each anecdote is a story of a selective and biased human being. Science requires corroborative evidence from other sources or physical evidence of some kind. You need to have a study with many people, with many things, and anecdotes are not science, no matter how sincere, interesting, or believable they are. They are not science. 2, use of scientific language. I mentioned before in the beginning of my talk, scientific language doesn't make science. Because science is respected and powerful in our society, pseudoscience often try to disguise with scientific jargon. Many times it requires care and in-depth analysis in order to understand. Maybe for us, which are trained, it's easier. Not many times. You know that we are very much specialized, and in many parts, I read a paper from other area, I really don't understand. I really don't know if it's a bullshit or not. So this is another example. This planet has been slumbering for eons, and with the inception of higher energy frequencies, is about to awaken in terms of consciousness and spirituality. So you can see here many words that try to mimic science, higher energy frequencies and so on, but it's nothing what is written here. So this is not easy to really to pick and understand if you are not careful enough. 3, they make strong statements to seem convincing. Strong statements don't make them true. Strong statements are made to turn the text tough and confident, especially when there is insufficient evidence to support the ideas. Look at this example. The creation of Dianetics is a milestone for man, comparable to his discovery of fire and superior to invention of the wheel and the arch. So this is a strong sentence. Whenever you find something like this, you should, start your yellow light to, something really strange is happening here. So an example here from physics, when everyone who is a little bit older here remembers the case of the cold fusion launch that was made in a press conference. I would like to say here, extraordinary statements require extraordinary evidence. So whenever you see something which seems really, really extraordinary, we should watch and ask for extraordinary evidence. 4, they make the status quo defend itself. The burden of proof must be on those who make extraordinary statements that are not accepted to everyone. So here is very typical from pseudoscience. They claim, you believe I am wrong, prove I am wrong, prove I am wrong. I don't need to prove anything. The person who is making this statement is the responsible to prove to everyone that this statement is true. So this is something really, really common, as you probably know. They compare themselves to famous outsiders and heretics, which are accepted today. Let me remind you that heresy doesn't imply correction. Remember that for every famous character in the history of creative thinking, there are crowds of individuals with crazy ideas or heretics who have never gained acceptance. So the world is full of crazy people. It's not necessarily true that these crazy people are correct. They always try to compare themselves with Copernicus, with Galileo, and so on. 6, they rely on rumors that are widely spread and easily believable. Although some facts have been transmitted from person to person from generation, this might no longer be true. Don't believe in the kind of thinking that bases itself on, I read something somewhere, someone told me. It doesn't make any sense. And 7, if it's not explained by science, then it's a paranormal mystery. Remind that unexplained is not equivalent to inexplicable. Some amazing facts might not have an obvious natural explanation, but usually there are often mundane, normal, and natural explanation for most phenomena. And what science cannot explain today, maybe it can explain someday. So this is important. And it's, there are many things that you can eventually look at in order to watch for pseudosciences. So the balloon detections have been grown. I will not go into the details. I just picked 7 ideas. There are many material available online if you want to keep watching on that. Let me try to finish which is our role as a physicist, as a scientist. I like this phrase very much. Thinking is a skilled work. It's not true that we are naturally endowed with the ability to think clearly and logically without learning how or without practicing. People with untrained minds should not more expect to think clearly and logically than people who have never learned and never practiced can expect to find themselves good carpenters, golfers, bridge players, pianists, and so on. So we need to train. We need to learn how to think critically, how to believe, and how to really understand things. But it's really important to see which are the problems, the challenges. First of all, there is something called the ideological immunity. People often have a sort of ideological immunity by which they seldom change their most fundamental beliefs. This is really important because if I really believe in something, there is nothing that will change my mind. I usually here make an analogy with soccer, which is really important for us here in Brazil. Let me give you an example that will show you what it means. I, for example, strongly believe, I really believe that the best team of the world is the team here of Campinas, Guarani Futebol Clube. Although the evidence show that Guarani is not the best team, but I don't care. I believe in that. I am a fan of this team. So this is a belief. It's stronger than anything. We can be in the 3rd division, we can be in the 5th division, I don't care. So this kind of ideological immunity works in many, many parts of the human brain. And if people believe in that, it's really, really difficult to change their beliefs. And it's important also that we should fight for a general education and the promotion of an open mind. There are evidence suggesting that education does not reduce beliefs in pseudoscience. In fact, the problem is that the emphasis on an open mind, ironically, can lead to more people to accept possibilities of, for example, UFOs visiting the Earth and extrasensory perception, astrology, and so on. This is important. A locked open window is as useless as a locked closed window. So we should try to make the general education and the promotion of a critical thinking. Critical thinking and science lay between these two extremes. We don't have to be completely closed to new ideas and new possibilities, but also not completely open. So we should be a little bit skeptical, a little bit worried about the importance of these things. So what should we do? We should start slowly. Each step helps. We should always keep an eye on pseudosciences. We should challenge the media and the politicians when they tend to pseudoscience and denialism. We should always be accurate, always accurate, never exaggerate in a scientific statement. This is really, really important because sometimes we, as mentioned here, we are seen as arrogant in our statements if we believe that we are really, really true. We should challenge students and friends and family constructively, explain the scientific methods, write letters when you find scientific letters, write articles, create a communication channel, engage in discussions politely. Let me just mention one example here. Few years ago, there was an interview from a member of the Supreme Court here in Brazil, when he is a lawyer, and he became the Supreme Court member, and he made an interview saying that he was studying now quantum law. It was published in Folha de São Paulo, which is one of the major journals, newspapers here in Brazil. When I saw that, I wrote a paper about the nonsense that he was saying in that interview. And I published an opinion piece on that. Of course, it has a lot of attention. It had a lot of attention. It had a lot of impact. So it's important to keep an eye on this, on these people that claim in this kind of channels and newspapers, interviews, and it's always possible to challenge, to write a piece, to write a letter, and to try to make this discussion happening. So the idea here is to engage in discussions politely. Another example that I would like to stress, as mentioned before, it's important nowadays to create a communication channel. Nowadays, it's easier to create a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, whatever, to use a social media, whatever is important in order to make, an engagement in this crusade that we should do in order to make science more effective and more visible. So let me just stop here. I would like to thank you very much here for the invitation again. It's an open thing that we are facing and we are living now. And I would like to finish by asking everyone who is watching to engage more in the science popularization, in the science discussion, using the importance, the beauty of science in order to show the society why we are important, why without science, without physics, we cannot expect a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcelo, for this very thorough and incredible talk. So I think we'll have time for questions and people can raise their hands. And before I start the question, I just want to say that first there is a quote that I like very much, Marcelo, from a politician in the US, senator called Moynihan. He says that everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not to his own facts. And that's what's happening. You know, people, they have their opinions, they don't separate opinions from facts. And that's one of the reasons for all these misunderstandings. And so I want to start the first question, if I may. And the first question is, it's an obvious question, what can the Brazilian Physical Society do to help in this crusade?
Well, I think we are doing, you as a president launched this initiative, which is very physical, which is really important. The problem is, as usual, it's very hard to get people involved and more engaged in this. And so I would also here ask to everyone who is watching to engage more in these things in order to show the importance of science. And there are so many things that we could eventually do. So to write position papers, that the one that you mentioned, I think it's really important. Even in basic things, we can never be in silence with this kind of things. We should always position ourselves as a society and making more explicit the ideas behind what is science. Another suggestion idea would be, I know that you are leaving now the presidency, but of course for the next term, probably make some kind of call for more books, more more channels, YouTube channels, podcasts, so an open call to help in some way. I know that the finances are always complicated, but sometimes a very, very soft and initial step towards some equipment or some ideas that could help people to start a new channel of communication that would be with the seal of this Brazilian Physical Society would be interesting to have. Some ideas, stimulate more physicists to write books, to start in the movement of science popularization for different kind of channels. This is really, really, really important.
Thank you, Marcelo. Of course, we have the YouTube of the Brazilian Physical Society with almost 8,000 subscribers. Mm-hmm. But the real question is how to pierce the bubble, how to go outside our bubble, because we're going to give talks to ourselves. It's like, how do you say, teaching the priest how to preach. So the real difficulty is to go beyond and to reach people that are not in our bubble.
Rogério, but look, I have been asking myself about that every time. So do you know, in 2019 which was the most, the person who most got more money from YouTube in the world. It was a kid, 7 years old, 7 years old. He opened toys, open toys online. It's a unwrapping toys channel. He got $20 million doing that. And I cannot understand how we are failing at showing physics in particular here, or science as a general. It's much more fascinating than that. We should make an effort in order to attract more people, to have more viewers. Take a look on the example. Let's talk now about the pandemic, for example. Science popularizers like Atila that we have here in Brazil. Atila, he's a guy who has been in science popularization for some years, but he got a channel. He has more than 1 million, 2 million now viewers or subscribers. We are here at the Physical Society, maybe with 10,000. So we have there are people is interested. So we may probably are failing in our universities, in our associations, in our societies to get and really find a good communication. I am sure that we should make an effort in order to do that, and we will be able to cross that bubble that you are mentioning.
Thank you, Marcelo. And before giving the word to Rodrigo, I just want to read from the chat that Marcelo Fontenelle, he's writing a book, he's launching a book, Marcelo, about, well, you can read, but physics, the physics Papa with sugar. Okay, you can read in the chat. So there's a launching of a book about this. So Rodrigo, please go ahead. There was a hand up by a Rodrigo, so not Rodrigo Pereira, another Rodrigo. Yes, Rodrigo, please open your, can you open your camera? Maybe you cannot open.
Yes, now it's unmuted.
Okay.
First of all, thank you, Professor. Congratulations on the talk, very nice talk. A question for you that I have, I was wondering what is your opinion on the, let's say, the burden that we have not only as physicists to combat this misinformation, but also as individual private citizens in our daily lives. How can we, in your opinion, combat misinformation in our families or in our group of friends?
Well, essentially, what I would say is it's not easy, no, because being aggressive is not the way. So my suggestion is always being humble, being correct, and try to show maybe indirectly the way that science works. So it's never a good idea to start with "you are wrong." So so you should always have to try to say, look, why do you think this is correct? How was the experiment? Do you know the reference? Why this is important, and so on. The problem is that we are facing nowadays, as you probably know, that there are now so many fake publications and journals, and everyone can publish and practically everything. So it's important to challenge even sometimes in a deeper detail. So this experiment, how it was done, how many people, how is the error margin, and so on and so forth. So always challenging trying to stimulate the critical thinking. And why this is working? Why do you think it's this way? Why not this the other way? So it's not an easy task. It's not something that is quite complicated. It's quite complicated and correct. I was reading these days this interesting book by a guy called Lee McIntyre, The Scientific Attitude. And he gave a very good idea. He went to a conference of the flat earther. So he went there and he was watching and said, and everything he claimed, nobody, they refuted. They said, no, this is not this way, this is not this. So he made a very clever way to approach that. He said, look, which would be the evidence that would change your mind? What is necessary to change your mind in this issue? So this is something which is really, really important. So to what level the evidence can change a mind? If not, I would say that it's worthless to discuss, because it's a belief is not anything else. So they will never change. So this is more or less what I would suggest. Always being correct, always trying to be polite, always trying to be really humble and show that how science works. I think this is really important.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you, Rodrigo. Fabrizio Oliveiro has a question. Fabrizio, can you unmute? Maybe. I don't know if you can unmute.
Okay, I got it. Let me start my video. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you, Professor Marcelo, for this great talk. I was thinking here about your presentation was very nice, but my question is the following. I mean, after the pandemic of COVID-19, we can see here that the scientific community basically failed in the fact that in the test to trying to communicate to society, in the sense that we have here in Brazil, for example, after 1 year of the pandemic, people who believe in the pseudoscience, the problems that is a general thinking that using masks, trying to keep social isolation and the vaccines, all that works. But my question is the following. What do you think that from the pandemic, I mean, what we learned about that, in the sense that what we have to do in the future in order to improve our communication to society at all? I mean, there are books, there are scientific papers, there are many things in the literature, YouTube channels, a lot of stuff. But I mean, basically, we are failing here. I mean, there is something that have to change. What do you think about that? Can you say a few words?
Okay. Well, it's always frustrating because we believe that we are failing because the other side is really noisy and organized, and I don't think that we are really failing, but we could make better. Just to mention one example, I like to use this example because it's more extreme. I use always the flat earth movement because it's extreme. For us, this is really, really, without any single doubt, is pseudoscientific. And you can imagine that we are now in 2021, that there is a not, it's a rather high percentage of population. The last number I forgot, but I think it's like 15% of the people, 20% of the people that believe that the flat is earth. So it's crazy. And anyway, in other issues which are related to health, it's always easier to appeal to, the more extreme claims, something that is not working, that is something that will cause a problem and so on. So my personal opinion on that is that we should, try to make more people engage in this battle. We are very few. We don't understand that, but just to mention one single number, do you know that now, today, only 20 of the young population from 18 to 24 years old go to some kind of higher education, to some kind of university. Only 20% of the young people in this country went, well, to a university. So it means that, well, and from that percentage, only 25% of them attended a public university, which means that they know anything about research and so on. So the vast majority of our population, of our society, they don't know what is science. They don't know what is a research university. They don't know what is to do research. So, and we are very few. Already, if we had everyone working on science dissemination, we would be few. So my only point is that to make everyone engaging in this movement, because we need more people to show the society what is science. Probably the probability then to have one of you doing that will succeed in order to be a very good communicator, to be the Attila of physics, no? Or to be like Natalia Pasternak, who is now also in evidence, a person who is good communicator but never appeared before. We should have more physicists working on science dissemination, to starting a channel, to starting a podcast, to work on public communication of science. So this is the best way, I believe, that we should try to do.
I also have one more question. May I?
Well, there are other questions, Fabrice, if you don't mind.
Okay, so just
send me by email afterwards, no problem.
Right,
I will leave my contact here.
Marcelo, that you may want to. Some of them you already answered, and before going to the question of Paulo, so Vanderlei Bagnato is asking, do you think that the problem is the lack of popular science culture or the excess of mysticism in our culture?
No, I don't think that there is an excess of mysticism. It's a normal. I would say all over the world. There are many people, but I think that we should be more, active in the science, in the communication of science. There are very few of us doing so. Let me just give you an example. We have thousands of physicists, just to mention physics. At Unicamp, we open a call for a book, science popularization book. We have a collection called Meio de Cultura, and we open a call for books. There is no single book of physics that appeared in this call. It was to publish a book. So I would say that more people should engage in this crusade. It's an important thing. Of course, with the pandemic, paradoxically, we had more space in the media, but of course, the ferocity of our opposers also is scaled. So I would say that it's important to engage more and more.
Thank you, Marcelo. Well, about books, just one quick thing. I wrote a book on the finding of the Higgs particle, the discovery of the Higgs particle. But it didn't have had some impact, but 4,000 copies or something. So even books, it's not trivial.
But it's part of a movement. It's a part of a movement, Rogerio. You wrote a book, and other one writes a book. So it's a culture that we have to, it's in Brazil we say trabalho de formiguinha. It's difficult to translate that.
Paulo, please go ahead.
Good morning, Marcelo. Good morning, everyone. I think one of the points about doing this science popularization and claiming some space should be more something done by societies and not only by individuals. And so, for instance, the Brazilian Physical Society could have its YouTube channel with calls for members to be doing this continuously, right? Instead of having something when each individual, as you said, the trabalho de formiguinha, something that would be promoted by a scientific society. And I think the Brazilian Physical Society has room for improvement there. Okay, this is something that we should be engaged in. We should, as a society, work together.
I agree. I agree, Paul. Everything. I think it's as I mentioned before, it's part of a movement that we should do, and every movement is important. The main point, for it's easier to move individuals, but for society it's very complicated sometimes. Not because, of course, we have the financial problem that I already mentioned, but also, it's as a society or as institution, you have to verify the content because it's you have your name on what is published there. So it's a little bit more. It's a further step. I think it's important as well, and we should do that. But I think it's a further step. So there are many layers on this movement of communication that we should follow, and every single layer is important. So the movement of individuals, the movement of society, the movement of associations, the movement of universities and institutions, and of course, international movements as well, and so on and so forth. So this is something that every single action counts. Every single action counts.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you, Paulo. Just reminding, since you mentioned the Brazilian Physical Society, Marcelo mentioned this fact-checking site called Verifísica. And one of the issues is that we didn't have an engagement, as Marcelo mentioned, of our members to embrace this initiative. So this is something we should work better, to get more engagement from our members. So I don't see any hands up now, and we have a timing issue. So I think I will thank Marcelo again for this fantastic talk and hand the stage back to Rodrigo. So thank you, Marcelo. Thank you all for watching and asking questions.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rogério, and thank you also, Marcelo, for the very inspiring talk. And I would like now to invite everybody to head to the parallel sessions. They're going to start in about 15 minutes. You can enter the room soon. So that's it. So enjoy the rest of the meeting and see you in the Zoom rooms.